I explore.
Alright, let me get a shot here. This view is pretty cool. Yeah, now for all these shots I'm using still a 60th for the most part tonight because I'm generally far away from everybody like I've been saying. So keeping my shutter speeds low and therefore my ISO low as well. Which means I'm going to go to f4 for this shot because I can afford it. When shooting a simple scene like this, just like a city scene, I'm very mindful of the way the people are arranged. So I'm usually waiting for a moment where the people are in optimal positions or as best as I can get it with all the randomness that's involved. Now, for these next few things, I'm wondering, should I switch to the 40?
Why not?
Yeah, let's switch to the 40. Let's try something different. Okay, so let's see here. This away. Now, the reason I wanted to try this other lens tonight, in addition to the autofocus lens, is because, you know, I tried this lens as well, the manual 40mm on the Z6, and I was actually pretty impressed with how well the Z6 handles manual focusing. Because in the D4, and I think a lot of other SLRs have this, you get a little focusing dot. So wherever the focus point is, when you achieve focus on that point, then in the bottom left corner there's a little dot or indicator that tells you if something is in focus or not. Neat. But that means you have to look away from your subject. It's kind of annoying. While, you know, back in the day, even today, for cameras that are more focused on manual focus shooting, like Leicas or, you know, other film cameras, they'll have like a, you know, the parallax thing or a split prism or something like that. And, you know, SLRs like this don't have that, unfortunately, not modern ones. But the Z6, and I'm sure other mirrorless cameras too, fix this because the focus point itself will turn green when you get focus. And plus you have focus peaking, which honestly was too much for me. I actually turned it off when I was using manual focus on the Z6 for photography because it was unnecessary, because the point already turning green was enough. So that's something that I'm sure I'm going to miss in this camera. I can already feel, because I've shot with this so much, I know that it's not going to be quite as ergonomic. It's just a little bit slower in this camera. The new one makes the manual focus faster. So let's come in this cool little alley. I love this space. I've shot in here many times before. See what we can get. Okay. There we go. That was kind of cool. This guy delivering something. But yeah, I had to quickly bring my focus down to where he was, focus on him, and then pull it back, put the composition back where I wanted it. So definitely not optimal in terms of speed, which in the case of street photography is often important. Now, of course, having said that, I can use zone focusing. And we have a video about that on the channel, of course. I'm sure many of you have seen it. So when I'm just walking around, I'm using zone, and it's the same is true on the Z6. So in that regard, it's identical. Zone focusing works the same. But zone focusing isn't always optimal. It doesn't work for every single shot. Like that one, I use zone, and I think I got it. I think he was at the right distance. So maybe that was okay. All right, let's go a little more in there. But it's nice having the option. It's nice having, of course, the ability to do zone focus, and then also the ability to just use the indicator in the camera to, you know, assist in manual focus. Maybe a shot this way. This DVD sign, I love the way it flickers and all the colors around here. It's cool. Let me back up a little bit. I backed up to make that single street light a little less prominent in the scene, because I really like the mural and those chrome pipes on the wall here. You can already tell I like pipes. That's the thing for me. All right. Let's go a little more this way. I like this little passage. I know this was here. I've shot here many times before. So the reason I wanted to shoot here, I kind of had this in mind to use it as an example tonight, is because it's a great example of how fluorescent lights can affect colors in your shot if you're not careful with your shutter speed. And I've mentioned this in other videos before, but I'll mention it here again because I think it's a useful little tip. And inside here in this little hallway full of lockers, everything is lit by fluorescent lights. And those lights flicker at about 50 hertz, 50 times a second here in Tokyo. Sometimes it's 60, different parts of Japan. Right, and so if I take a photo with a shutter speed that's faster than that, like let's try it on a 250th, then what we're going to see is the scene will not be lit evenly. Okay, so I'm going to try that. Okay, and sure enough, even with multiple shots, the colors are like kind of different with each shot. Sometimes it's more green, sometimes it's more purple. That's because these lights are slightly greenish, green tinted. And so the white balance is kind of going crazy and whatnot. But if I put it on a 50th, okay, and then I'm also going to put it on f5.6 because I have more light at a 50th, so I can get more DOF. Then, beautiful, perfectly even lighting. Everything is the same color, same brightness. So that's a really nice tip that when I figured it out, I was like, oh, that's how you fix that problem. You got to have your shutter speed a little low when dealing with fluorescent lights like this. Okay. Keep going. I'm going to go back to faster shutter speeds though for getting some action here and there. Now, didn't have to go far, but I really like this scene here. I'm going to get this one probably better on a 60th again. Get a nice vertical shot, 40 millimeter. All right. And if we look back, there's some cool views in this direction too. I love how these windows and that building kind of blend together. I'll get a couple shots of that. Okay. I did them on a 60th, but then I tried them on a 30th as well. Same reason as before, just trying to keep my ISO as low as possible. I was already on f2.8, which is the max aperture in the, well, no, it goes to f2, but I generally keep it on 2.8 on this lens because on 2 it's still perfectly fine. Let's try it on 2 just to see how it looks. But generally, I find I get a little bit less sharpness on 2. You know, every lens wide open starts to lose a little bit of its sharpness, so yeah, but that still looks really good. Okay. Very cool scene. I love the windows on this older building. And then that still old but less old building up there. Very cool. All right, let's go back out on the main street over here. Put my settings back. Do something faster. Set up my zone. Those of you who watch this channel know I try to be very strict with myself. When I'm done with the scene, check all my settings, make sure they are where I want them, because in the next few moments there could be another great shot and I might miss it if my settings are all over the place. Okay. All right. So I switched to my 24-70 because it's an autofocus lens, but also I wanted some different focal lengths for these next few shots. Okay, so I'm gonna try a couple things here. Let's get a little closer, a little bit. Okay, so I like the wide view here of this street and entrance. Okay, looks cool. Okay, and the other thing I wanted to shoot is, I love the way the blue of this karaoke up here and all this stuff blends together. Yeah, looks good. I'm gonna underexpose. And here's where I think actually for these kind of bright highlights where I feel like the Z6 would have a little bit better dynamic range. Again, this is not a scientific test, so I could be totally wrong about that. Okay. Yeah, so I underexposed the shot a little bit more. I went minus 1 on the compensation. Now the shadows are quite dark, but the highlights are looking better, right? We'll see. Don't have the comparison shot with a similar shot from the Z6, but just kind of my experience, it would handle the highlights a little bit better. But not that much. I don't think it has that much more dynamic range than a D4. Now, one last thing that caught my attention right now, but I should have mentioned it earlier because it's the big one. In terms of autofocus, I already said I use tracking, but the big difference is also how far it can track. These SLRs, even a more recent one like a D850, the focus point only tracks in a kind of an area that's kind of, it's pretty big, but it's more or less the middle of the frame. Whereas on a mirrorless camera like the Z6, you can track to the very edge of the frame. And that's probably the biggest thing that I gotten used to between the two cameras since I started using the other one, the Z6 2 months ago, is that I could really track my subjects anywhere I want. I could compose by, putting the focus on wherever and then recomposing, and the point will just stay on that subject even to the very edge of the frame. Right now I tried to do something similar and, I couldn't quite do it with this one. So I had to just, get it as close as I wanted, as close as I could to where I actually wanted, and then just say, okay, that's good enough. And generally it is good enough. But that's probably the biggest difference I noticed so far shooting between this and that overall. It's just how the AF system works. Not so much maybe its accuracy, although it is more accurate and faster on the Z6 for sure, but that's not as noticeable in day-to-day experience. It's more just the way that it works. And I've always said that cameras are all about ergonomics and how they feel in your hand and how you use them. And to me, how the AF system works is certainly part of that ergonomic equation. I would say the AF system on the new mirrorless camera, like the Z6II, is definitely much more ergonomic. It's easier to use. It makes me struggle less to get the shots. This one is still great, and I mean, it's perfectly relevant in 2020 or 2021 now. And I don't think this is a bad camera at all. I'm still enjoying using it, and I'm sure it will stay in my bag for a long time in my collection of cameras, which is not actually very large. But yeah, that one, the Z6, is much easier to use, basically. I think what it comes down to. All right, guys, I think that's about it for today. As always, please leave a comment, subscribe. We love comments. I always answer them. I like to have a discussion in the comments. If you have any questions about anything I covered or any feedback, a couple of times people have given us great input on things that I wasn't aware of about the cameras or about photography, so that's awesome. And of course, please, if you could, support us on Patreon. That's a big help for us. Please check that out. And also, we do now have affiliate links in the description that's also going to help with the channel out. So if you're interested in any of this gear, maybe buy it through the link so that we get a little bit and that helps us out, okay? All right. So thank you guys, and remember always, challenge your eye.